Hello and welcome to another video. This is Voorhees Retro 81, and I guess this is going to an extent substitute for my current complete lack of extra Halloween content. I did know that was probably something that was going to happen. I will cover off on why that's not really happened probably in a later update. It's not definitely not going to happen, but I've not got a lot of time now to put together stuff before Saturday for Halloween videos, so it may well be the case that they don't happen. So my apologies. Anyway, that all being said, Gold Payne has just put up a very interesting, for one such as myself, topic, that is Resident Evil versus Silent Hill. So Gold's opinion was Resident Evil, and he gave a very interesting and both technically and personally take on it, and he predominantly focused on the first games in each series on the PlayStation 1. Now I'm going to say Silent Hill, but I will also say that I definitely agree with Goal on the PlayStation 1 era. Firstly, obviously there were, if you don't count the gun games, there were 3 Resident Evil games on the PlayStation 1 compared to only 1 Silent Hill game, and I personally didn't get on with the first Silent Hill game. I have debated giving it another shot, but as PlayStation 1 game prices start to fly through the ceiling, as far as I can make out, everybody who was previously buying up Super Nintendo games has now started buying up PlayStation games, because the PlayStation was the next retro system that they have all that crazy mad nostalgia that we all have for. Prices on that are ludicrous. I've seen things like, people asking 80 quid for copies of Wipeout, which is just absolutely ludicrous. So for a game that I really didn't enjoy the demo of, I never beat the demo of, and etc, etc. Don't know where that guy's running off to, but thankfully he's not trying to take me to jail. That's a start. I just decided basically I don't want to end up paying 50 quid for a game that I didn't like the demo of, and I never beat the demo of, just to find out that I don't like the full game either. I mean, a lot of people have told me that the demo is kind of a bit rudimentary compared to the full fat game. But yeah, so on the PlayStation 1, I would completely agree with Goal that I would agree that Resident Evil is better than Silent Hill. I think, although Resident Evil 2, as I covered off, Resident Evil 2 is my favourite PlayStation 1 game, I would say that, in fact, from a point of view of which is the actual better, practically, technically the better game, I think the original Dino Crisis is the best survival horror on the PlayStation 1. I think that just blows all the other contenders out of the water from a pure, technical and gameplay standpoint. But it's not quite as strong on the atmosphere and the story, I feel. Although the scares in Dino Crisis, I feel, were better. I felt Dino Crisis was probably the most frightened I've been during a game on the PlayStation 1. So yeah. So anyway, where Silent Hill becomes my favourite survival horror series is with Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 on the PlayStation 2. Now, if I haven't done a top 10 of PlayStation 2, and it has been something I've debated doing, and maybe after doing this I'll do it, because I've actually got a week off at the moment, so that does give me an opportunity to do a bit more video content. I mean, I probably will, but I'm also balancing it out with a whole ton of other things that I haven't done that I want to get done, and just general things that I need to do because I've got the time to do them, and if I wait I won't have the time to do them, blah 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 blah. Meander. But Silent Hill 3 is my favourite PlayStation 2 game, full stop. That is my favourite PlayStation 2 game, hands down. And I've played that game through to the point where I'm like on something like New Game plus a billion well, not a billion, but I've got to the point where like I can get one shot by a dog if I'm not careful, because the difficulty has ramped up so much on the New Game Plus side. I just love that game. I love the atmosphere, I love the characters, I love the storyline, I love the monsters, I love the looks, I love the control system. It's just a nigh perfect game to me, and for me, the only survival horror game that comes close to pushing that off the parapet is Project Zero 3. If you're in America, Fatal Frame 3. So Project Zero 3 The Tormented is my nearest to favourite survival horror game after Silent Hill 3. Again, that's a game that I've played through over and over and over, and I always enjoy. But we're talking about Silent Hill and Resident Evil, and at basic level, I enjoy the second trilogy of Resident Evil games, but I feel like they actually, this is the thing about the Resident Evil series for me. I feel like Resident Evil was at its strongest when it was a fixed camera angle adventure game, and it took until Resident Evil Revelations on the 3DS came out for me to reconnect with Resident Evil after Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which was the last of like my true favourite Resident Evil games, and it was the last time that I was really excited about the series until Resident Evil Revelations came out. Between those games, it kind of became like, Resident Evil 4 certainly is basically, for me, it's the blueprint. It's the kind of like slightly wonky, first step out the door blueprint for all those big sort of cinematic third-person shooter games that came out after it on the 360 and the PlayStation 3. Your Uncharted, your Army of Twos, your Gears of Wars, and etc, etc, etc. And as such, it's kind of a completely different animal from the Resident Evil of old. And I just didn't enjoy it as much. It kind of went away from being filmic and kind of came into just being a game. And obviously Silent Hill has kind of free roam, but it's still an adventure game. It's maintained its sort of adventure game status throughout the entire series. It's never become just like a point and shoot. And I think when they brought Resident Evil 4 out and they turned it into an action game, it immediately exposed for me how duff the control system was for an action game. It was absolutely fine for an adventure game, and out of all of the survival horrors that came out in that PlayStation 1 and sort of early 3D PC games era, most of them had tank controls, and Resident Evil, although it gets a hell of a lot of stick in retrospect and even at the time, it had the best control for me out of those kind of games, especially when you got into Resident Evil 2 and 3 when they added the auto aim. But then when Resident Evil 4 came out, Resident Evil 4 was just behind the times in terms of the way it controlled. It was like an agony trying to point at something and shoot it. And then, even then, when you did that, often it would kind of randomise your shot slightly. So, like, a perfectly aimed headshot would count as a shoulder shot, or the enemies would just like. And I get it that the enemies were very spongy in Resident Evil 4, and they are in Resident Evil 5. And I haven't got around to playing Resident Evil 6. I do have it, but I want to finish 5 first before I get into it. But I've played a little of it around a mate's house. Back when such was the time that you could just do that, and it had the same kind of thing that you'd shoot like a bog standard zombie, and it'd take about it'd take about 3 hits to the head to put it down. And it's just like, the whole point of zombies is you shoot zombies in the head, because if you shoot them anywhere else they won't go down. But in this game, I spent all of Resident Evil 4 shooting people in the knees because it meant that they went down. and then I could deal with them a lot easier, and I didn't have to worry about them grabbing hold of me and doing some ridiculously overpowered throw move, or like dropping dynamite at their feet when I shot them in the head for like close range, because I was still waiting for my blooming gun to reload. Look, long story short, I did actually quite like Resident Evil 4 overall, but it has a lot of gameplay issues that meant it was a one and done game for me. You know, once I'd beat it, I've been back to it a few times and I've just been like, man, this game is slow and unwieldy and I don't enjoy it. And I don't really understand the like godlike worship it has, and the fact that it's been remastered for every system. I mean, I'm sure they're going to bring Resident Evil 4 out again on like PlayStation 5, no doubt. You know, it's just one of those games that I think it's overrated, and I think it started a movement within that series that I wasn't a fan of, even though I was kind of like, I enjoyed it, but it was like when the Resident Evil 4, 5, 6 trilogy started, like basically the games went for me from like what had been like, you know, 9.5 out of 10 games down to about sort of 6.5, 7 out of 10 games. And, you know, other survival horrors superseded them very easily for me. You know, things like the Fatal Frames, Project Zero series, The Suffering, Silent Hill. These kind of games just became what I was playing instead of Resident Evil, and I wasn't excited about Resident Evil anymore. And that's kind of been something that, like, I've never quite moved through it. You know, I've very much enjoyed the two Revelations games, and I hope there may be a Revelations 3 at some point. I don't know. And I've only played like the first sort of hour of it, but I'm quite enjoying the Resident Evil 2 remake, which is interesting for me because I'm not normally a big fan of remakes and remasters. I think they're pretty much pointless, but that is one that, so far at least, it's bringing something. It's making a good case for it being worth existing, if that makes sense. And it's a decent game. I'm a little bit worried about the resource side of things, which everybody in Japan seems to think it's great to expect you to get through an entire like environment of a survival horror game with two bullets and a Mars bar. You know. I know Evil Within had that problem to a great degree. You know, they're like, oh great, it's a boss, I've got 3 bullets and like a injection thing that's going to give me 25% health. I'm so boned. You know, that's just like the way those games be, unfortunately, a lot of the time, and I think that's why I've gotten more into kind of like the American style, you know, more puzzle related horror games like Amnesia and such, like in the current and past, you know, recent generations. I mean, actually, I will say, like, out of the last 2 gens, my favourite horror games have been Fear 2 and Condemned Criminal Origins. You know, Monolith know exactly what they're doing with a horror game. And those series are fantastic. I mean, I kind of was a bit like meh about the ending of the second Condemned game. It got a bit stupid, but yeah, those are really good games. And like, I think for me, those have been like the successors of the Resident Evils and Silent Hills. One final thing I was going to talk on is just like I think Silent Hill has kept its mystique more than Resident Evil, because they've not been able to get it off the ground as a you know, very like a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Switch kind of title. So it's not been pushed into that sort of mass marketing AAA kind of meat grinder. And I think as a result, it still has quite a kind of like that weird mythos to it, has kind of retained its mystique rather than being forced down a, you know, cat ears and gold weapon skins type funnel. Anyhow, so that's me. That's I prefer Silent Hill, but I'm a big Resident Evil fan as well. I hope this was interesting to listen to. Take care of yourselves, and peace out.